Jeff. He recently served as creator, executive, this is new, executive producer, writer, showrunner for NBC and Netflix's Manifest. He developed and executive produced Mysteries of Laura. His credits include consulting producer on Beauty and the Beast, Franklin and Bash, Thorn and Bones. Rake also executive produced Kashmir Mafia, Boston Legal, Mismatch, and The Street. You're such a show off.
It's been a long time. You spread it over the years. It's like, okay, fine.
He's also written feature screenplays because why not? For MGM and Disney, and lives in Los Angeles with his wife and their many children. I'm Jordan Roeder. I'm also a published novelist, screenwriter, TV writer with a few less credits. I've adapted several novels, including my own, and some foreign language formats for both TV and film. I've written on American Housewife, The Watchful Eye, and I'm currently adapting my third novel, Moms Like Us, into a TV show for MGM Studios. So I'm really excited.
Not so shabby, by the way.
Thank you. So Jeff and I met on the picket line during the WGA strike, and I was a massive fan of his show Manifest, which I watched with my daughter Gemma, and it was not the type of show that I thought she would like, and it was something that we were both so drawn to. But why I kind of chased after Jeff on the picket line was because I ended up talking to a lot of people who worked with you on Manifest, and everyone just had the nicest things to say about you. And that doesn't happen very often in this business. And so I was like, he can't be that nice. And so we didn't start walking together. I started chasing him and making him walk with me on the picket line. And we became friends. And one of the things we really connected on was the fact that we had both just sold novels off of partial manuscripts or ideas. And so now we are here, almost 3 years and 2 published novels later. And I'm just so excited to talk to you about Detour, which was co-authored. And I want to mention your co-author, Rob Hart, who can't be here today, but hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. We'll talk about Rob.
Yeah, we'll talk about Rob. Nice things. Only nice things.
Only nice.
Jeff, can you tell us a bit about the book and where the idea for it came from?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much. I'm here because of you and you. And so I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks to Zibby's. Sure. So 3 years ago, right before we went on our latest strike, there have been others.
Yes.
Manifest was wrapping up, and I did what I do whenever I finish up a project. I start panicking about what's going to be the next project, or will I never think of anything again? And so I just went into, Machiavellian, ruthless brainstorming, right? What's the next thing? And I usually start that process by thinking about my own life, because I love to tell stories about families, spouses, parents and children, siblings. And Manifest was, checked all those boxes. And so I was thinking, okay, well, what's another big idea like Manifest? When I say big idea, whether it's sci-fi or supernatural, a big hook that could, make a good commercial trailer, right? But also have legs through, again, emotional drama. That's kind of what I'm most interested in. And so I was thinking about, those categories, and after a couple, and I say ruthless brainstorming. Ideas don't usually just fall serendipitously in my head. I have to find them, and maybe that's true for all of us. I don't know, but I'm kind of systematic about it, and when I thought of Manifest was about a plane that disappeared for 5.5 years, and it started with a family being bumped from a flight. Half the family went on this plane, half the family went on this plane. They got home on time. They got home 5.5 years later. There were twin siblings. When they came back, one was 5.5 years older than the other. So you get it. So, just trying to create as many complications as I could. So here I am again 3 years ago, and I came up with the core concept of this story. I'm not going to talk about it in great detail, because the whole point is it's kind of a surprise. It's a big surprise. There's some big twists. But anyway, it's kind of centered around an everyday cop who has a kind of a unlikely act of heroism, saving a very rich, important person, sort of in the vein of like an Elon Musk type person who isn't, but this guy's an aspiring politician. He's an industrialist. He's very high tech, and he is sponsoring a shuttle flight to one of Saturn's moons. Long story short, our everyday cop ends up saving this guy's life in an unexpected way, and in return, this billionaire, his character's name is John Ward, invites this everyday cop to take a seat on this shuttle to go off to Saturn's moon. And it's not something that the cop is looking to do, but he's sort of bribed by the billionaire because our cop has a lovely wife and 2 kids, and his son in particular is severely disabled and lives in a wheelchair. And the billionaire has his reasons for, like, it'd be good PR to put this hero on this flight. And he says to the cop, well, if you'll go, I'm going to write a huge check for you, and your son will never be wanting for anything. You can give him all the medical care that he'll ever need. That's what pushes him over the top. Anyway, that's the setup. And this book is supposed to be the first of 3 books. So this book is mostly set up. It's world building. We set everything up that I'm just describing. And our hero ends up going off into space. And then things sort of go sideways. And if you buy the book, or even if you just pick up the book, but if you buy the book and you read the back, you read the back of the book or the inside flap or whatever it is, it gives all of this and a little bit more away. But that's when things get weird. So where did it come from? Again, just thinking about family, thinking about challenges that can be put to everyday people, and then just thinking about how to make it very complicated.
Yeah, well, you did that. You check.
Check.
So did you ever consider, and we talked about this on the line, but these people, you guys weren't on the line with us at the time. Did you ever consider pitching it as a series first?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So when I was thinking about what I was going to do next, I wasn't thinking, well, now I'm going to write a book. I was just thinking about what would be my next TV show. What happened was I came up with the idea. I made an appointment with my TV agents, like you do, and which was, of course, on Zoom, because we were still kind of in Zoom culture. Right. Some of us are still living in Zoom culture. But I set a Zoom with my agents. I pitched them what I thought was the show, and they liked it. But then, as I'm sure I've told you before, then my agent said something unexpected to me. He said, well, it sort of sounded like a novel when you just pitched that. What if you write the book? And then, that would be a new experience for you. But then ultimately, maybe you'd adapt your own book to television. And that happens, right? Like the Game of Thrones guy did that. It's happened many times. But I thought it was a crazy idea because I've never written a book. I didn't think I could pull that off on my own. And that's what led me to seek out a co-author.
And I always found this interesting, that it was kind of became like a speed dating thing for you to find a co-author, right? That there was and so what were you looking for in your perfect mate?
Right. I don't know if I even knew the answer to that at the time. I think I thought I was just looking for an experienced author who was kind and generous and could mentor me and teach me the process of how one goes about writing a book. So I got very lucky, but I should point out, because it's unusual for a first-time author to be able to set up a book without having written a bunch of chapters. And I have to confess that I was able to do that. That is to say, my agents set up meetings for me with 4 or 5 different publishers.
Was it off of did you send pages, or was it just off of your?
Right, that's a great question. So I always thought that you have to have written 2 or 3 chapters for them to read. And he said, well, I was really compelled by your pitch. So let me just set up meetings and you'll pitch it to them like you pitched it to me, like you were pitching a TV show. So I was very skeptical going into that because I didn't think that would be successful, but sure enough, they set up meetings with me. All of these were on Zoom again. And so I pitched 4 or 5 publishers the 20-minute pitch of what the book series was. And to my surprise, I think I had 5 meetings, and 2 of these 5 publishers were willing to make a deal to write the first book. And in real time, I said to them that I would want to do it with a partner, that I couldn't do it on my own. So here's what happened. So I ended up making a deal with one of these 2 publishers, which we've all heard of. It's Random House. And it was a subdivision called Random House World, and they specialize in genre and the supernatural. And so they said to me, well, let us send some books to you, and see if you, with writers who they had all worked with and who they liked. And they said, well, why don't you read these, and if you respond to anybody, we'll see if those people are interested, and you'll meet with them. And that's exactly what happened. So they sent me about 5 or 6 books, and I was prepared to read all 6 of them. And if I didn't spark to any of them, they would have sent me more books. But in fact, the second book that I read blew me away. And it was called The Warehouse, and it's by a writer named Rob Hart. His name's on the front of this book. Spoiler alert. And it just knocked me out. Why did it knock me out? Well, not coincidentally, I'm sure that's why they sent him to me. It was set in kind of like a very near future. This book is set in a very near future. It was kind of like slightly dystopian, same with my story. But what really knocked me out was the fact that not only was it kind of in the genre of my story, but just like I was describing 10 minutes ago, it was as much about character as it was about plot. And I was deeply invested in his characters. I read the book in 2 days, which is saying something for me because I'm not a fast writer. And I just finished it, and I just thought, this has to be the guy. If he's interested in what I want to do, it's going to be the guy. So we got on Zoom. He lived in Staten Island at the time. He lives in Jersey City now. I'm here. And we got on Zoom probably a couple times, and we just sort of fell in love with each other. And the rest is sort of history. I mean, 2.5 years later, we still love each other. This is the last book event that I'm having. And I just kind of traipsed around the country with him, and we had a great time. And we had a great time writing the book together.
And you just finished writing the second book, or you?
Right. So in fact, we finished writing this book about a year ago, and as Jordan knows, and as I'm sure a lot of you assume if you don't know, the process of editing the book, working with your publisher, with the editors, takes a long time. And then there's the marketing and the art for the book cover. There's a lot of stuff. So yes, so we finished this book a year ago. And at some point along the way, actually early in the process, we had convinced the publishers that we had enough material for it to be a 2-book series. And as of now, as I sit here, we've all but convinced the publishers. I say all but because there's no contract for a 3rd book yet, but we've kind of convinced them that it should be a trilogy, and they seem to be on board, which is very gratifying.
So in TV, so much of the storytelling lives in this collaborative nature of, the writer's room.
Right.
Also, the actors you're writing for. You have a different director every episode. You've got a production designer, a budget, studio notes, network notes, right? So what did you enjoy most about writing a novel, working with just one writer and working on your own? And what did you miss, and what surprised you most? 3-part question, go.
Okay, you might have to remind me of something. I'll get started. Writing a book was, as I expected, exponentially harder than writing a TV script. Why? I mean, so many reasons. The sheer length, of a book. There's so much more required of an author, and we can spar about this if you disagree with me. But I found that there's so much more required of a book author than of a TV writer. A typical I work in 1-hour drama, and a typical drama script is 50 some pages. And if you've ever had the opportunity to look at a TV script, you open it up and there's not that many words on the page. There's sporadic dialogue, 1 or 2 sentences of action up here and then down here, and then you're on to the next page. And what I ultimately realized once we really got to the task at hand of writing, 290 pages of prose, is that, to your point of a minute ago, when you're telling the story for a 1 hour drama, part of the story is told with what's on the page, the action, the dialogue, but so much of it is told in who the actors are that you cast, the director who creates kind of the whole visual palette, the production designer who makes every scene look like, what it is, costumes. I mean, there's so many people on your team that help you tell the story. But when you have just however many pages of prose, it's all on you. You have to paint the picture. You have to create the emotional tone of the scene. You have to give the visual context. You alone have to share all of the internal monologues and the internal thoughts of everything that's happening on the page. And we all know as readers that, sometimes an author feels obliged to share with you a page or two of three that's just all internal. Sometimes you go 3 or 4 pages in between any dialogue whatsoever, just kind of describing a place, a locale, a dynamic, an emotional state of mind for your characters. And if you do that in a television episode, you're doing it, in conjunction with everybody else on your crew who is helping you understand the look and feel of every scene. And when you're all by your lonesome writing your book, as you've done 3 times, as I've now done once, or, in partnership with my partner, you have to do that all by yourself, and it's with words. And maybe we have a diagram somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Besides our diagram and some text and some emails, it's just finding the words. And by the way, it's not just about finding the words; it's finding all by yourself what all the scenes are in your book. Yeah. When I first started working on this project, I started by myself before I had my co-author, and I just wrote an outline, and that was how I ended up pitching the story to the publishers. And I tried my hardest to come up with every moment that belonged in the book, as you probably do at the beginning also, because disciplined TV writers start with an outline, and screenwriters as well, and you create the entire outline before you write page 1 of your book, or at least you should, in my strong opinion. And I worked for a couple months just creating that outline and trying to come up with every single scene. And when I finished that first outline, it was like 50 pages long. And I could not for the life of me figure out what's missing. And the answer is so much. So many scenes between the scenes. There were so many in-between moments that I was missing. And so, my co-author taught me so much, but probably the most important thing that he taught me was how to find all those in-between moments. And that is no easy task.
And it's not just in between moments, right? It's also the description of things. Like, I would get notes from my editor, even on this one, which is my 3rd, but I hadn't written a novel in 20 years. And she'd be like, where are we? Like, what is happening? Describe the house. Like, come on. Like, I was like, can't we just write interior Millie's house continuous?
We can't.
We cannot. No, we have to talk about, like, how does the light hit it at this time? Like, I don't know what time of day it is. Like, can it be? But no, you have to figure those things out.
It's so true. And that was the essence of my collaboration with Rob, who taught me exactly that, and to force your imagination to paint the full picture. And I sort of get it now. Writers, I think, authors are always still learning. We're all still learning as writers, as artists, as whatever we do. But yes,
I think a trademark of your writing, both fiction and TV, are these strong characters that people are really drawn to, and they want them to be okay and to succeed, and they want to see what happens to them. Is there, you're welcome. Is there a particular character in Detour who you most identify with and why?
Right. Well, the easy answer for me is that cop that I was telling you all about. He's sort of the main. I mean, there are 6 characters. It isn't on. I mean, there's a bunch of characters, but there's 6 main characters, and my goal was for them to be as different from each other as possible, because we send them all up on a space shuttle. In the story, it's a year there and and a year back. It's set in the near future, so that you could believe that you could get to Saturn in a year. In real life, in 2026, you can't do that. It takes like 8 years. But anyway, I was sending them on a long journey in a tin can together, and so I wanted them to be as different from each other as possible, so we could have as much conflict as possible and different points of view, and not on. I mean, only in one small way, but not unlike. In the Apollo movie, they all have a really big problem to solve. And so I thought it would be more interesting if they were all different from each other, instead of it just being like 6 astronauts. There's 3 astronauts and there's 3 civilians. But anyway, the main guy, the everyman cop, is in a small, I guess the most like me, not, but I couldn't be farther from a cop, but he's a dad, he's a husband. He is anxious. I'm very anxious. And he's just a regular human being,
Yeah.
put in a very irregular situation. So I guess that was probably the easiest character, for me to write, because even though I am a writer, I share a lot of the same neuroses that and fears, for my family, for myself, whatever. So that was probably the easiest. There's a young graffiti artist who happens to be incredibly intelligent, but is very much underestimated. I'm not like him at all, but it was fun for me to invest in building out a character who lives, does non-traditional things in his life and is forever underestimated. And so I guess that was sort of me when, after going to college and law school and becoming a lawyer, I decided one day when I was 28 years old that I was going to throw it all away and become a TV writer. And so I faced some of the same thematic challenges that this guy faced. There's a single mom raising 2 little girls. I'm not that person, so that was just me trying to get in the head of that person. There's a guy who's an alcoholic who is desperately trying to hold on to his nuclear family and is having a hard time doing so because he has such a terrible track record as a dad and as a husband. There's a guy who's bi, he's in a queer relationship, he's in a straight relationship, and is trying to figure out, who am I?
That's exactly your story.
And that's exactly my story. No, I certainly put myself in the shoes of a lot of people who I don't really know anything about. But talk to friends who live in that world, and Rob was able to kind of help me build out all of these characters, and between our 2 family, he's a family guy also, but he has different kinds of relationships than I have, and we kind of put all of our relationships together, and we mined from that to the best we could, and to some extent we just used our imagination and did the best we could.
And without giving any spoilers, I do want to say that, like, when Ryan gets back from space, it's like it reminds me of Manifest in a lot of ways. With what if my life, if I come back and life is different,
right?
And
they do. They come back and life is different,
and it's very as somebody who has kids and who has all those neuroses, it really emotionally that really hit me when he got home. And
yeah, it's like somewhere in the middle of wish fulfillment and nightmare scenarios.
That's right, and the guilt and all of that. And you might not be able to talk about this, but what about when is this going to be a TV show?
No, I have no idea when it's going to be a TV show. I have had the good fortune recently to enter into a business relationship with a TV production company. And so all I know is that I'm going to get the opportunity to write the script.
Great.
And then we'll see. So who knows? I'd love for it to be, a TV show. As you know from my origin story, that's where it started, and we'll see. We'll see. I'll share one other little tidbit that people might not know, but at least one person in the audience might be interested in hearing. So tomorrow morning, I happen to be opening a writer's room to start working on the first season of what would potentially be a Manifest spinoff. So I'm super excited about that, and that's going to take up the next 5 months of my work life. There's no production guarantee, but they're letting us write the first season, and so that's what I'm kind of busy with right now. So I'm not in a huge rush to turn this into a TV show, but I'd love to.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
And I know that this lives somewhere between sci-fi, supernatural, obviously very character driven. Is there for you, like for any of us here who are sci-fi curious, supernatural curious, but don't read a ton of that, are there any like touchstone novels, authors, movies for you that you go to that like are kind of tonally similar?
Yeah, sure. I mean, people who have been reviewing or talking about the book have been comparing it to The Martian. I don't really agree with that because The Martian, anybody who saw or read The Martian knows it was so much about a solitary experience. And, one guy's just amazing quest for survival. This book is flooded with people and plays very much more in the real world. But, the protagonist in that story I found very relatable, very every person. And so I think that's fair. I really love that movie, Arrival, which obviously, was hugely, sci-fi. But I think what I enjoyed so much about it is that there was just, it was so much about, this one woman's personal life or family life, sadness that had happened in her life and her quest to kind of overcome that by communicating with aliens. This is not a book about aliens, by the way, but just the vibe of that is something that I really connected with. One other thing that I'll say just about the book is that it was my intention from the very beginning, and I think we achieved it, for it to be a book that would appeal to not sci-fi fans. I mean, hopefully if you're a sci-fi fan, you'll like the book, but it's not really about that. Right. It's about regular people put in extraordinary circumstances, and in a sense, like Manifest, where I was talking about how the family was divided, that's a similar theme that's playing here. And so much of this book is about a broken egg. That would be the metaphor for like a family that is like all the families in the book that are just kind of torn apart, and our heroes trying to put their families back together again. And so if that's something that is interesting to a reader, then I think they'll have a good experience with the book.
It's such an amazing, fun read. I could not put it down.
Thank you so much.
I want to open up to questions if anybody has any and would like to pose. Otherwise, I have another question or two, and Jeff is going to sign books.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, going back to the writing of it with a partner. The idea is yours. So do you write a chapter and then give it to Rob, or how does that work?
Right. So, excuse me. So, sure, the idea is mine, or at least, was at the outside. Mm-hmm. It sort of became ours as we worked on the outline. But sure, I came up with the characters, I came up with the premise, I came up with the big twist and the ending. But he really enhanced it, because as I said, he helped me find the complete version of the story. In terms of writing, he typically started first, with chapters, and I would typically rewrite. But yes, as we got further along, it was more, equally back and forth. So when we wrote the second book, I was doing even more, of the writing, but we would just push it, we would push the Google Doc back and forth. And one thing one significant thing that I came up with that kind of changed the nature of our storytelling is that by the time we got to the end of book 1 and into the meat of book 2, I kind of had an epiphany that that we didn't have in the outline, which was that there was an opportunity for us to break POV, point of view, in a radical way. In terms of, and again, I don't want to speak about it too explicitly because I feel like it'll undo the satisfaction of the read, even though it's more profound when you get to the second book. But it basically occurred to me that we could be writing from the point of view of our heroes who are on this journey, but that we could also be writing from the point of view of the families that they left behind. And for whatever reason, that wasn't a device that originally we were employing when we were writing the first book. Kind of in the beginning of the story, it played more traditionally. They're training for the flight. They're at home with the family. We're doing all the world building, establishing all the conflicts in all their families. And then once they went off on the journey, they were on the journey. And we didn't go back to focus on what was happening at home. But once we got to the end of this book and once we got into the second book, I realized it would be a lot richer if we were, with our heroes, but also with the family members. And that seems sort of obvious and like, duh, why didn't you think of that at the beginning? But because something weird and unexpected happens at the end of the book, it was less crazy not to have thought of that. But once we started trying to do it, I think it really enhanced our storytelling. And I think that what will be fun for readers who read the first book and stick with it and go to the second book is that it becomes a much more satisfying read for reasons you'll get if and when you get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not a sci-fi girl, but I love Manifest, and this sounds so good. Like I can't wait to go home
So
and read it
nice.
tonight. So that's exciting. I wanted to know about your research and whether you focus on research or is it more just imagination writing?
By necessity, we needed to do some research in order for you to kind of believe. It's such a far-fetched story. The technology is futuristic. The fact that they can get where they get in such a quick time is a leap. And the fundamental problem that happens for them in the story, as a reader, whether you knew the science or not, you wouldn't buy it unless it read completely real. So we had to kind of do some physics research, some like rocket science research, some like parallel universe. We had to really dig into a lot of things that we didn't really understand. Rob, as a matter of fact, is sort of a science geek. So some of it I learned from him, but some of it we had to kind of, talk to a couple people who really understood the stuff. ChatGPT was, so it's not like we had to go take a class, but yeah, we had to dig in just to make it feel completely real. And you'll read it and you'll tell me what you'll send me a DM and let me know what you think. But I think it plays pretty realistically.
Anyone else?
With the technology that you were just talking about, do you make up your own technology, like in machines or?
We did, but we grounded it in things that will play real for you in terms of whether it's about able to go in a farther distance with less fuel. We introduced some alternative technology ideas that yes, were partly made up because the story takes place a decade from now, and who knows if we'll really be able to achieve these things a decade from now. But we grounded some of this technology that was kind of from our imagination in theories that will ring true, because they're based in theories that we've all kind of read about, future science stuff based on current science.
But some technology is proprietary. Can you knock off proprietary technology? Is that allowed?
I have no idea. But I think they would have flagged it for us if we were exposing things that
Can
were.
you do that in television?
Lawyers, they have lawyers read those scripts, and usually we're informed if we're exposing something. But I don't think we expose anything that like Sam Altman or Elon Musk would sue us for. We're talking about kind of basic theoretical stuff at a general level. So we didn't do any corporate espionage to find out anything that any of the current day tech industrialists would get in trouble, would get mad at us about. I don't think.
Please don't tell them. If you
No trade secrets.
I'm looking forward to reading the book and reading this twist. I love a good twist. But when you wrote your extensive outline, did the twists and the endings stay pretty true? Did they change? And then I'm curious, how do you approach twists? Do you kind of know ahead of time you have to disguise things, or as you're writing, do you write yourself in a corner and then have to figure out later how to get them out?
Great question. And I would say, in terms of like writing wherever you want to go and pushing yourself into a corner and finding a way out, for sure we did that in the outline process. And in the outline process, I left a lot of gaps. It reminds me of a story that I've heard about Shonda Rhimes. She says that whenever they write the first draft of Grey's Anatomy, and they're writing like that medical thing that's going to happen, in the first draft they always, whether it's Shonda or anybody on her staff, they just write medical, and then when they are actually writing the script, they go and talk to doctors and specialists, whatever, and they come up with that thing. And that's how they've come up with hundreds of stories. But they don't burden themselves with figuring that all out, in the first draft, because I think that much of every one of those episodes is more about the doctors and the relationships and the personal life and this and that. And then they know they need to get into high stakes by 30 minutes in, medical. And so I think we sort of did that analogously by figuring out a lot of what you're asking about in terms of what were going to be the specifics that would help the reader believe that they could do this and go there and do this that fast, and when they get into a dilemma, how they were going to get out of it. A lot of placeholders, and then going back at backfilling.
But then did the ending stay?
And reminder, the ending here, if I haven't made clear, is very much a cliffhanger.
Right.
We're not really resolving much of anything. So I hope that's cool. But yes, ultimately, and even as we sit here, we've only gotten to the end of book 2, which ended where we expected it would, but we have pushed forward a lot of things in book 3. And no, I don't have all of that. I know what the very end is going to be, but do I know what like the big twists and turns of 3? Only to some extent.
No question. You both mentioned being on the line for the strike. I was there with you guys actually working for ABC News at the time, so I'm glad that everybody made it off. I just finished a novel. I'm about to start the editing process with my agent.
Great.
And I have a broad question, actually for both of you. I'm curious, as a male author in a landscape dominated by female readers, what you think I should keep in mind the most as I'm going through that editing process.
Really great question. Why don't you start?
Wow.
I'll speak to it, but
yeah. I think it depends on what the novel is about and which audience it's geared toward. Is it geared toward men and women? Is it geared toward women? Is it romance? Is it what genre it is? Because
it's a love story.
It's a love
Which
story.
I'd love it for it to be for both. But
Right.
I know that the dominant readership, I just read a New York Times article that said 80% of fiction readers are women.
Yes.
And the number of men has been declining in recent decades. So you went from 40% to 20%, and I'm scared to think where it's going to go.
But that's exactly why I think you're in good shape, because it is so dominated by women, and that is amazing. And I'm thrilled. Like almost all the other novelists that I'm on Instagram with, and if we're all women. I think I read like 2-3 books by men last year, unfortunately. But that's why I think it's actually makes you a little more unique in that space. And I do think that it's a lot about. Have you sold it to a publisher yet? Or
No, working with my agent at UTA.
Yeah. So I think that once you get to the publishing stage and the marketing stage, that's where you have to kind of create a story for yourself, and it becomes about the marketing. But
for sure. But it's what's on the page also. I mean, I tried to be very clever in creating a surrounding context that, is, sci-fi, and there's action in this book. And there's a lot of like stuff that's traditionally thought to be maybe a little more appealing to the male reader. But when you get into the book, it's it's 60% family drama. And, I just tried to write strong female characters and just create a lot of emotional and family dynamics that I thought would maybe bring in women readers who weren't necessarily sci-fi or supernatural. I don't know. I keep saying supernatural. This is not supernatural, but who weren't necessarily like hard science, sci-fi readers. And I'm hoping it's a pleasant surprise for people who aren't into some of those traditional male tropes to find that they tie the story together, but it's not really what the book is. So if you're writing a love story and you're writing something appealing to women, I guess I would just encourage you to bring the guys in also, and hopefully we can get that 20% back up a little bit. It's kind of a sad statistic for dudes.
I agree. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yes,
you.
one quick last one.
Do you outline you're getting ready to open a writer's room for a series? Are you outlining the season?
Great question. So the room opens tomorrow. I'm co-creating the spin-off with two of my favorite, most excellent writers from Manifest. And we're going to do the same thing that we did every season on Manifest, which is we'll spend the first 4 weeks only working on arcs, big picture stuff. In that fourth week, we'll pitch those arcs out to Warner Brothers and Netflix, which are our two studio entities. And only in week 5 will we start working episodically. So yes, very much so.
How many episodes is it?
It's going to be a 10-episode order. We've already written 2 scripts. We wrote the pilot, and then they had us write the second script, which we still have notes on that we have to address. But fundamentally, 8 more episodes.
That's a piece of cake for you. You're used to doing like 24 to 15.
Way back in the day.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks. This was so nice.
Thank you, guys.
I think we have one more question.
Oh, one more question.
Over there, if you'd like.
I was just curious, so it seems like meeting your co-author was kind of like almost like a blind date, like you read
For sure it was.
and I was just wondering how you developed an intimate relationship that you said you fell in love with each other, how that developed, especially on Zoom. And then also, so like the emotional relationship, but also operationally, like how you decided who did what. And I know that came up before, but I don't know, both on that emotional relationship and the actual writing.
It's such a good question. I don't have a great answer for it because a little of it was luck. You just find that person, and in fact, to your point, we didn't meet in person until we were like 2/3 through the book. So it was truly a long distance affair, and there's something about even on Zoom, when you're just kind of riffing together and talking about character ideas and talking about themes. And I think we were just saying things that kind of spoke to each other. And if somebody's throwing ideas at you that just kind of vibe with you in an almost magical way, I think, I say we fell in love with each other, I think there was just something musical about the process. There was just, somebody says something to you and you already sort of had that idea in your head, and you're just kind of like, to stay with the metaphor, making music together, and it warms your heart. And also we spent a lot of time really opening up to each other, right? And talking about family stuff and relationship stuff. And, he had 2 tweens. I have 4 kids who are a little bit older, but like, I don't know, it became like a little bit of like a men's group therapy session. And then when we started writing and passing things back to each other, it's sort of like you're writing letters to each other in kind of a metaphorical way. And I remember reading some of the early things that he sent to me, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of like touched me or moved me that like he'd write a scene about a husband and wife, and I would go, God, I would have written this just like this. And I think he felt the same when he would get material from me. And 9 times out of 10, maybe it just wouldn't go great, but it just went great. And you know, so I'll go back to the word I used a minute ago. It was lucky. A lot of it was lucky, you know, that we really found the same voices, and he'd use an idiom that I would use, or say something about his kid that I might say or had said, and you know, you can't necessarily explain it.
Sounds like a good book.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, it sounds like maybe a little bit of kismet.
A little
Yeah,
bit of
yeah,
kismet,
yeah.
a lot of kismet,
Yeah.
a lot of kismet.
Well, congratulations
Thank
on
you
your
so
book.
much.
Thank you for coming out. It's a really interesting process. It's fascinating to hear about inception to completion and just with your background. If you haven't bought the book, please buy it. Please also buy Jordan's book. We're so happy to have you guys at Zibby's. Come visit us again soon. Feel free to hang, mingle.
And feel free to get the hell out of here and finish the football
Or
game.
Yeah, exactly.
they'll be happy to sign, take photos, whatever. Thank you again. And
Good night.